Hello and welcome to another video, and thank you. We hit 5,000 subscribers, which is just absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough. It's been brilliant. Yeah, I'll smash it out of the park. 14 years it's so, but no, I'm really happy we've done 5,000 subscribers, and it's down to you lot for keep pushing me out there. And yeah, so again, thank you for that. Today's one, and I said to you in the last video, I've got to be a bit careful how I word it. It's weird, it's creepy. This is St Peter on the Wall Church in Bradwell, Essex. And what can I say about it? Oh, for starters, it's built in 642, which makes it the second oldest church building in the whole of the country, and the 17th oldest building in the whole of the country. So yeah, it's pretty old. I know some of my American viewers on here asked me about, you know, how old our buildings are and all that. This is like well over like 1,300 year old, and it's just sitting out in the middle of a field with the door open. You can go in and out whenever you want to, and yeah, it's very interesting. It is built on a Roman remains, so the Roman fort that was there beforehand was situated there and out onto the mudflats. Over time, the building crumbled and got washed away, and out of that rubble, St Ced come over and built a chapel very much in the style of like Egyptian and Syrian churches. So it's got that sort of feeling about it when you look at that building structure. He built that in about 643, and not much more is known about that church until the 14th century, when the bishop at Chelmsford got told that they'd built an extension on it. And yeah, it's just out of the blue. So they must have been left alone to do what they wanted. It's gone through a bit of a rough history. So it was used, as far as we know, up to the 14th century. Then they had the extension built onto it. Then it burnt down, or not burnt down, but inside caught fire, and a part of it collapsed. They then restored that part, turned it back into a church. Then that sort of fell away, and they turned it into a barn. And then in the late 19th century, again, it's been put back into a church. All a bit confusing, but it comes along with a massive paranormal history. The ghost sightings down there, the strange events that happen down there, are pretty spectacular. And there is a Arthurian community, I'm sure, I don't know if I'm going to say that right, a Fana community on the site of it. Now, this was founded by an old RAF pilot back in 1940 after World War II, and it's like a Christian commune. And I'm being really careful. I'm not saying you can actually apply for a job to go there and work there, stay there. You stay at this commune and you get your food and all that. I've seen a little video. I checked them out on YouTube, and they're walking around in bare feet and ringing bells for their lunch and all that. It looks really, really peaceful. On the day we went down there, we parked. I'm being really respectful. Stop it. Right, I'm sure it's lovely. We met people from it. They were absolutely fantastic. Really nice people. Even when we walked into the woods and was finding these little burrows, and yeah, and I thought Ed Keane was going to come out of it, but no, I'm sure it was really nice. Gave my daughter the creeps, but we'll get into some of the ghost stories. But I'll tell you a bit more about how the environment is and all the stuff that goes on, and you make your own mind up. You know what? For someone in Essex, it's the oldest place you're going to visit, really. I don't think we've got any older buildings of that in Essex. No, I don't think we have. I mean, this building is built out of the Roman bricks. So the brickwork of the chapel is actually the ruins of the old Roman structure. So they've reused it. The foundations and all that. There are some Roman ruins around there, but more like the earthworks. So you can't really see anything where the Romans were. But you take a walk along the beach, some people do find Roman roof tiles down there and bits like that. So it's quite, it's got a lot of history. So again, I'm just going to say where this place is. So this is on the Dengie Peninsula. That is the far part of Bradwell-on-Sea. So you head out to Bradwell, you keep onto the right hand side and you go as far as you can, and you've got the seawall there. And that's why I call St. Peter on the wall, I guess. I'm not making that up. It probably is. You've got the seawall on now. So when you go there and you know a bit about the history, so this is built by the Bishop Said, that later become St. Said. He built that for the Northern Saxons, and they had quite a large Saxon community around the area, and that is where they used to come pray and everything. It is a bit weird that the area become disused, and there wasn't really recorded, so nothing was really recorded about the history after that. So it's sort of like Bill, they went there, they was praying there, and then after about 100 years, and it sort of deleted itself from history till 1442. And that's when it popped back up to say they'd done this extinction and blah, blah, blah. Other people, myths and legends, going into the legend side of it all, will tell you that it may have not always been used for Christian beliefs, and that a period of time that it may have fell into the hands of other faiths, beliefs, and maybe not on the lighter side, the darker side. So the black magic side of it all. You can dig around and find people that believe it was used for black magic from around about the 10th century. So it's a little bit hit and miss. But that is a long period to not have a written history. About 1,000 years of having no history of one particular building, which seems a bit crazy to me. But not when you take into concept of the whole area. So when you get there, you park in the car park and you have to take a very long walk down this lane. Now they do pilgrimages from Chelmsford down to St. Peter's on the Wall, and actually there's one, so this will go on Friday, so on Saturday there's a pilgrimage from Chelmsford to St. Peter's on the Wall. So if you go there, you'll be more than welcome, and you can watch them walk down to the chapel and have a service. I say when you go to a place and you visit it, the environment or the day or the environmental conditions that you're in make you feel a certain way about a place. So if you go to somewhere that's dark and creepy, and you go there when it's dark and creepy and it's night time, you're going to feel creepy. When you go to a place like this and it's baking hot sun and the corn is just about knee high, and you've got this deep blue sky above it, and you've got this chapel sitting out in the middle of nowhere, it's really creepy. It felt strange, honestly. And that was before we got there. That's before we got there and met other people and spoke to them, which made it a lot more creepy. But can I get banned? I don't know if I'm going to get banned for this video. This isn't anti-Christian, this isn't anti-faith, this isn't anti-religious. This is just how my best mate is a vicar. I'm not. Honestly, this isn't anything to do with that. This is just the feeling you feel walking around this place. But this pathway you walk down to go to the chapel is actually where you get the first ghost reporting. Now as you walk down and you look over to the right hand side, in that field over there, in the cornfield, you will see a World War II pillar box. Now pillar box, for anyone who doesn't know World War II stuff, that is where mainly the Home Guard was stationed to look out for invading planes and all that sort of stuff during World War II. But if there's invading forces on the coastline, they were expected to defend the land. Two soldiers that are on guard in that pillar box in 1940. I don't know the date, it's between 1940 and 1944, I believe. They were on duty in that pillar box, and they're just on the lookout, and they hear a noise in the distance. They said it sounds like rolling wheels down a dirt track, which is exactly what was in front of them, really. And they're looking out thinking it was someone for them coming down, and when they look over, they see a Roman soldier towing a cart behind him. Now, this wasn't any ornate cart or anything like that. It was just a Roman soldier on a horse attached to a cart. They watched him carry on going down towards the chapel before disappearing. Now, he didn't vanish or anything like that. He just went out of sight. They thought it was a bit peculiar. One of them decided he was going to go and explore and find out what this was. And he walks out. Now, this is, I guess it probably would take him about 10 minutes to get down to where the chapel is. He's walking down towards the chapel when coming towards him along that footpath is the same thing, this Roman soldier with this cart coming right towards him, and then brushes past him and carries on going up the road. Then vanishes. This time it doesn't disappear into the distance, it actually vanishes in front of him. This sets up quite a lot of sightings over the next 30 years of this Roman coach going down there. Now, there are other reports on that bit of track that you go down. People hear horse hooves on that track, but there's no horses around. And definitely this time there can't be any other horses around. This track is on its own, and there's farming fields either side of it. A paranormal team that had done their own investigation down there said they spoke to a farmhand around about 10 years ago who said when he was working on the fields, he also see this Roman soldier coming down that track. Now, that happened to him during the daytime. With the World War II ones, these home guards see it during the night. So, it doesn't seem to matter if it's day or night. This image, this replay, is seen any time of the day or night. As we walk down that track, we start getting an eerie feeling. And my daughter turned around and said, it gives her Children of the Corn vibes. And I had to agree. It felt weird. It just, very still. The birds, you can hear all the birds chirping. It just felt bizarre. That amount of open sky, that flat landscape, the absolute, the wheat or corn was just dead level, and it just felt strange. That is your own mind playing your tricks on you. We carried on walking down to the chapel itself. For an old building that doesn't look great, it is actually stunning. To know the age of this building and it's still standing there, and the fact that you can just open the door and go in is really impressive. Now, when we were there was a gentleman putting up some gazebos at the back, and this is for the festival that is going on tomorrow, Saturday. And I went up to him and I was having a chat, and nice gentleman, asked him some history about it, and he was asking me what I was doing here and all that, and he said he used to actually work on Big Brother, and he used to do all the rigging and all that sort of stuff, props and all that. He then told me, I asked him about the ghost stories, and I knew about 9 or 10, and then he told me a load more, which then I've gone away and looked up and found some evidence on and all that. The ones I know are the ones I'm going to tell you first of all, because they're, for me, are quite intriguing with the depth of them, and they're most commonly known as well. So as you go into this chapel, there's very few windows, and as the light comes through the window, it shines onto the cross, which was absolutely stunning when we were there that time of night. And we went back later, and the sun was bang on that cross, which was it was a really nice sight. It has a peaceful feeling in there. Now, I know that other people that have gone there of a night time say that they've been there during the day, everything is fine. As soon as it starts getting dark, the whole atmosphere of that place changes, and instead of being a calm, peaceful place, They say he starts to feel angry. And when I spoke to the gentleman, he doesn't do paranormal. He goes there and prays. And he said he won't pray after dark. So in the winter, he'll go there during the day. After dark, he won't go there. And I said to him, why is that? And he said, it's just a dark energy. There comes a dark energy. He believes this dark energy comes from over the mudflats and it invades that church. Now that mudflats is where the Roman buildings and all that would be, because a lot of it fell into the sea. Is something creeping into that chapel. The chapel itself, one of the most common ghost stories you're going to hear about a chapel, is the ghost of the lonely man. So the story goes, in 1920, the chapel is it's made a chapel again. Can't say the word. I know what it looks like. I can't say it. So in 1920, this was made back into the chapel again that could be used for prayer. During the first few years, a lonely gentleman is said to go up to that chapel and prays in that chapel every day of the week, without fail. And he's meant to do this for 20 years. One day, somebody goes into that chapel and finds him dead in the chapel. That gentleman is said to haunt that place now. Now, going up to 1959, the place is upgraded to a Grade 1 listed building. To mark this event, a lot of people started visiting the chapel again. More public people would come and visit this chapel. A gentleman from Bradwell, he is quite a regular goer to the chapel for prayer. He goes up there every other day to pray. And one day he goes in there and he sees a gentleman sitting on the bench, just praying. He doesn't acknowledge him. He doesn't want to interrupt him. He's sitting there praying himself. And he looks up and the gentleman's disappeared. Now there's no other doors in that building. That man would have got up, walked up the centre of that chapel and got out the door. That door is big and it's creaky. There's no way that man could have got out of that chapel without him being heard or seen. The man from Bradwell, he can't believe what happens. He keeps it to himself, doesn't even mention it anymore. Over the next few years, this sighting is seen again and again. And one of the best ones is in 1972. So in 1972, there's 4 people in that chapel all praying. They'll get up, ready to leave. And when they turn around to walk to the door, there's only 3 of them. They'll look at each other and go, where did he go? They look around and there's no one else in that chapel. Yeah, seconds before, when they've all been sitting there, they've been there an hour and this gentleman has been in there with them for that hour. But when they finished and they stood up to go, he weren't there. This is his sighting of the lonely gentleman. Now, I know some paranormal teams have done investigations and they've tried to contact him, and some people say they do contact him, and I'm not going to say they're laughable videos online, but you're more than welcome to go and look at them. But some of them are good, some of them are not. But yes, they do try to contact this gentleman without much success. So we're just going to leave the chapel for a second and we're just going to walk back outside and walk away to where you've got the effigy, Wicker Man effigy, that they're going to burn. Sorry, I meant the lookout post. It's a poor interpretation of the Wicker Man, if you ask me. Again, that gave me the creeps. It's because I was thinking about Wicker Man. But down that area there, along that, it's like a footpath. Now that footpath actually leads to the commune. That is where we see, or reported seeing, the ghost of a girl. Now this girl is described as a maid. Now she is a very young maid, so we're probably looking around about Victorian times, which I find interesting because we know this is a farmstead and we know that people would have used that. Now the community sort of around that area sort of like built up and then fell apart and built up and fell apart. So Bradwell has expanded and gone back together and whatever for centuries. So Bradwell mainly was where that farm is and where the chapel is, and due to things falling into the sea, they moved it more into where Bradwell is now, where the village is now. So could this girl be from a a lot earlier time, but she's seen walking along the pathway heading to where the commune is. Now that commune is actually built again around about Roman buildings. I don't think this could be a Roman girl. The clothing they describe is very plain, so there's not much description of it. It is just a pale grey dress, quite short, and she's got like a headscarf on. But people have chased after her to see if she's okay, because she's a very young girl, and they see her out there on her own, and they run up to see if they can make sure she's alright, and before they can get to her, she vanishes. Some people think she's running to the field, some people think she's gone down to the beach. I call it a beach, it's a mud flat with loads and loads of shells on there, and yeah, you can call it a beach. Loads of sand fleas. Oh my god, so many sand fleas. It was just incredible. So we're walking along and we're just picking up all these shells, fantastic shells down now. And as the sun was getting lower, you could start seeing all these sand fleas jumping out of the sand, and they're like leaving thousands of holes in the sand. And yeah, it sort of made us come off the thing and go back over the mud flats. And yeah, it's not the greatest idea. Don't go down to the beach area if it's wet. It floods very, very quickly, and it's you just get really muddy. Not that I slipped in it at all. But again, the reason why I went down to that beach is because of a ghost story. Or is it a ghost story? A ghost sighting. So again, this comes from World War II. And I guess it's a lot of these stuff are going to be around World War II when you get sightings like this type, because they're actually there observing the sea, the beaches for people invading. They're expecting a German invasion along that coastline at any point. It was identified as the most practical area to attack, going up to the Blackwater Estuary. These soldiers are on lookout. Now I don't know if there's a different type of lookout post there. I can't imagine the pillar box would have been very good. It's too far from the shoreline, so I'm assuming there was another thing stationed there. These soldiers are looking out to sea when they see a boat coming towards them, and they're talking to each other, and they say it's got no lights on it, but they can see people rowing on this boat. It gets closer and closer to the shoreline. One of them turns around and says, "It's not modern." He goes, "What do you mean it's not modern?" He goes, "It's a really old rowing boat." He goes, "But it's massive." His friend goes, "What fishermen doing out this time?" He went, "No, they're not fishermen." He goes, "This has got huge sails on it." And then he takes a deep breath and says, "It's vanished." Now both of them see it, but one of them couldn't see it. I guess I only had one pair of binoculars or something. One of them had seen it when it was far out, but didn't look back up at that. But the other one was tracking it coming in and relaying it back to the other one. And then he says, it's vanished in front of him. Was this a Roman ship? Was this a Saxon boat coming in? Again, it's very vague. He didn't get enough description to say if it's Saxon or Roman. It could have been any of that being at that location. We know this was built for the Northern Saxons. We know it's built on Roman remains. It could have been anything. And we have 1,000 years of history that no one knows about. So anything could have happened. And that said, the next story may come from that dark period that no one knows about. But before I tell you about that, I'll tell you about the other bit we did. So after we went down the beach, walked down to the commune, and you go through this wooded area, and you walk through, there's a peacock or pheasant running around. I think it's a peacock running along the path in front of us. And all the time you're there, for somewhere that's like in the middle of nowhere, all of a sudden you get two males will come along and they'll talk to you, ask you what you're doing, blah blah blah. Very extremely polite. The most politest people you'll ever meet. They are so polite. Walking down into the commune, and I was looking over to the side, and there's these old barn sheds that are totally run down in the middle of the bushes, in the middle of nowhere. That felt creepy. And then you walked in, and I've got to say, and this is no disrespect for anyone who has anything to do with that place, but walking through the woods and then coming across these buildings that is set out like Friday the 13th is very creepy. There was no one around. There's no one around that commune, and yet we know people lived there. But when we just stumbled across it, and these buildings, these chalets, just look like something out of Friday the 13th. You may not agree with me, but in our mindset, we always think we found the Wicker Man and the Children of the Corn. We were getting ourselves a little bit creeped out. We turned around and we walked back out. Now, again, I'm saying these people there, they are the most politest people you'll ever meet in your life. So, no offence to them, but the whole setup just felt really, really creepy. So, moving up now to 1965, and this is a real head scratcher, creepy one. We have a group of 4 people that are walking down to the chapel, and from a distance, they can see lights moving around the outside of the chapel. They just assume they're not the only people down there. They get closer and closer. Now this is at twilight, so it wasn't completely dark. They notice that these are dressed like monks. They know people do pilgrimages there and all that, and sometimes people think everyone's a monk when they are just robes, like priest robes and things like that. They're not all monks, so they're not thinking much of it at the time. They get closer, and now they are right at the edge of where the footpath, it's hard to explain, you'll get to a point where the normal footpath ends and you go out onto the chapel site itself. They get there and they look up and they see 12 monks walking around that chapel. They sit back and just think, well, we don't want to interrupt them because they're doing something. As the monks walk around the building, they went behind the building and never come back out. Now there's no door behind that building, but they said one by one, as they went to the rear of the building, they didn't appear on the other side. And they're looking at it thinking, well, where they all gone? So they're thinking maybe they've gone down to the beach area. So they walk down to the other end of the church, look around the corner, no one there. They've gone back up, look around the other side, no one there. And they've split up and have gone around either side of it. The monks are not there. These monks cannot disappear. Nothing else happens to them. No, they don't see any more monks or anything like that. But they see these monks, 12 of them, walked around that chapel, went to the rear of it and disappeared. Now we do know that that rear of that chapel at one point did have this extension built on it. But they, Chelmsford Cathedral, were only told of that extension in 14 something. So how long had it actually been there? What was going on in that extension? Now apparently it was meant to have a bed on it and all that sort of it. What we don't have, there's no reports of a bell being heard. Normally when you get old chapels and churches like that, there's always a ghost story about the bell ringing out and all that. I not found that. If you know of one, put in the comments. But this one about these 12 monks just going around the corner and disappearing is really puzzling. Because for a ghost story, they'd either have no faces or they vanish in front of you or all this. At least you've done a magic trick and walked around the corner and disappeared. So who's that bloke who used to do all the things at Christmas when he was younger? Walking through the Great Wall of China, not Blaine and all them Dynamo. I can't think of his name now. American guy that used to do it. Not even like Hugh Geller. I can't think of his name now. But yeah, it would have been quite impressive for him. Literally, they said they went to all 4 corners and they couldn't see them. Yeah, I don't really know what to make about that one, but definitely a strange story. What you're probably noticing about this video now is that I've slapped a load of photos in it of this place. And that's because I took over 600 photos. It just looks stunning. The sunset, everything just looks so perfect. I used to be a photographer years ago and it was just so picturesque. At the same time, it felt really creepy. And yeah, it's just one of those things that you just could not stop taking photos of. Ironically, I've actually been to this place before, but not right next to it. I've driven down the path before, I'll say that. When I've done the coastal trip, It took me 2 days to get out of Essex, driving the coastline of Essex. It's actually the longest coastline in the country. But to get out of it, I was going in and out of all these little farm roads and going along farm stretches. And the farmer in Bradwell let me go right away along his sea wall and come right out by the chapel. And then I went down a separate path from there and out onto the main car park area and went out. So I've actually been there before. Now I do remember seeing that chapel up there, but not really thinking much about it. Not knowing that it's like 1300 years old and that it's a grade 1 listed building. So it's actually quite impressive. So now we're going back into the chapel itself. And at one point I went with my wife and daughter. They stayed outside. I went in there, shut the door, and I was just walking around filming. I wanted to get a sense of what this place is like when you're the only person in there. That's because people say that the end of the church, as you walk in, so I went up to the far end and stood looking down, that end of the church, they say they see figures moving around that chapel all the time. Now this isn't the night time, this is the daytime. They say they all feel very, very peaceful, and I couldn't feel anything, and I wasn't expecting to feel anything. I'm not really like that. My skeptical side don't allow me to do that, but I wanted to see what it felt like being there on my own. What I've seen in other people's videos as well is that they find like shells in the wall and people put feathers in the wall. I do know the reason behind that, can't remember it. I see it on another video where they went to an old building and the same is done now. I didn't really see any of that on that day. I wasn't really looking for that. But these figures that are seen just wandering around are not solid. They are meant to be entities of people just wandering around that building. Now it's just an open rectangle. There's nothing really in there. What people say, again, as it gets dark, that energy, those figures, turn from something that feels peaceful into something that feels threatening. So people that have stayed there overnight, lots of people stayed in there overnight, they all agree that the atmosphere in that building changes. Now that could do with temperature changing and all that sort of side of it all. Your mind kicking in that you're in this 1,000-year-old building and it's meant to be haunted and all that. Mind playing tricks on you. Then we've got the report of 2 bird watchers. I'm not saying they're like pillars of the community or anything like that, but they're not there looking for ghosts, and there's a big difference. They're there and they've actually been around that area looking for bats, and they get up early in the morning to watch the birds coming in along the mudflats. They're intending to stay in that church if it's open, or they brought bags and they're going to sleep outside the church. Lucky enough for them, the church was open and they made their bed in there for night time. They're laying there and they're just talking, and they see this bright light move across the chapel, and they're just staring at this bright light, and they say it moves from one side of the chapel back to the other. It is not coming through no windows, no doors, and it goes from being low on the floor, moving up onto the wall, up by the cross, and then back over. There's no real repeated pattern, it's just moving around. They're completely puzzled and they don't really know what to make of it. Apparently one of them gets his camera out and takes a photo of it, but nothing comes out. Now I defend this thing about nothing coming out because I guess my first real job was working at a photo processor, doing all the film developing. Quite often we would go through negatives and we'd print the images, and then people would come back to us and say, can you print that one? Now to us, there's nothing on that negative. But sometimes they'll go, I need that little dot there. I want to see what that little dot is. And you print it for them, and it'll just be a light or a speck. Or they'll go out and say, we went to a party, we took all these photos and none of them come out. And they say, can you just print what is on the negative? You print what is on the negative and you will see the faintest image on those negatives. It's just where the exposure is wrong on the camera. So them saying the photos didn't come out probably just means that when they took them for processing, the people didn't print the photos. They nowadays you've got digital cameras, you see the instant result, and like sensitivity is a lot better on the sensors than on the old SLR cameras or the old medium format cameras. So I'm sort of defending them. They took photos, but they don't have the evidence for it of this light. After a few minutes, this light disappears, and that is when the whispering starts. They're sitting there and they can hear this very, very quiet whispering, and it gets a little bit louder and a little bit louder. It never gets much louder than that, just it's a constant whispering. And it's not just one or two people. They say it's like a whole congregation of people they can hear mumbling and whispering around as if they're in the middle of a service. This is freaking them right out. Now these are bird watchers, come down, don't know the history of the church, and just didn't know nothing about the paranormal side of it all. This scared them. They gathered up their stuff and they went to leave the building. As they picked up their stuff, all the whispering just stopped dead. And they looked round. This light was bang on the end of the chapel, right in the dead centre. It was getting brighter and brighter before it just vanished. That was it for them. They got their stuff and they went out. They went back up to the car park where their car was parked and slept in the car park for the night. I take that with a little bit more credibility than some of the other stories that I'm going to tell you now, because I'm not going to say they're not. They are just the common ones that a lot of people will tell you about the place. So around 1997, one of the most common stories that went round about St Peter on the Wall was this screaming ghost. Now a lot of people, I don't know, most haunted and all that hadn't really started then, so this was sort of out the blue, and I know Broley Rectory was getting a lot of attention at that time. I think a TV programme being on, it had been covered, and they spoke about Bradwell and all that in it, and I think they may have shown a photo of the chapel. So a lot of people started heading towards that chapel to see if that was haunted. And then we quickly got these reports of this screaming ghost. Now what it states is that people would be in that chapel for night time. They would hear a scream from outside the door. They'd open up the door and they'd see a lady standing there screaming, and then she'd vanish. Now this report is about 6 or 7 times this gets reported in the space of about 3 years, which I guess if people want to add their own bit to the story, they may do it. Most interesting about it, after that, there's no more reports of it. So it only seemed to be a very short space of time that this screaming ghost was seen now. Now this one is, I'm not going to say pinch of salt. I was going to say pinch of salt, but no. This one has probably got an element of credibility to it, being the person that is telling it. Not me. About the person who's reported it, I should say. We've got a retired police officer, which is where the credibility comes into it, going to that chapel, and he's just lost his wife. He's going to that chapel and he's praying. The door opens up and this man walks in. Now I'm not going to say this is the lonely man, the ghost of the lonely man, because it just feels a bit different. This man walks in, goes up to him, puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "God is with you," and then he disappears. The retired police officer looks up to think, who was that? He heard the door move, like he heard the door open up. He heard him walk down to him. He put his hand on his shoulder and said, "God be with you." But there's no one there. As he felt that hand on the shoulder and the words, he looked straight up and he just disappeared. Now I find that very short, very strange, and probably just a little bit more credible than embellished ghost stories, if you know what I mean. A very short incident that just happened, and he reported that back to people he knew, and they turned around and said, "Well, you know it's meant to be haunted," and people pointed to the lonely man. Now I don't link that up because the lonely man has never been seen talking to anybody else in that church. So the next one we have is actually a cottage that is outside of the church area. So this is up the footpath. It is said that a phantom haunted that cottage and is seen riding a horse as fast as they can down that pathway towards the chapel and then vanishing. What reports have it as stating sort of like that phantom horse, so it's not a solid figure of a horse with a man on it. It is like a spirit entity of a horse and a man racing down towards the chapel. Not much more reports upon that, but again, that is a commonly reported one from around about the early 19th century, so we've not got much more dates on that. What we have as well is, and I think people got confused there, or maybe not, we have a report of a monk that is seen just outside the door of that chapel. Now when I say a report of a monk, we have quite a lot of reports of this monk seen outside the doors of this chapel. This is probably the most frequent sighting down there, which is why I've left it till last, because again it's monks, isn't it? Also, those people who did not receive the monk, and the ones I've told you I'm sending to you and you've not got them, contact me. I've got one in Southend that I'm resending and don't know what happened to that one, but anyone else I said that I was sending them a monk and they gave me their address, I've posted them and they're not been delivered. I know all the ones that have done them and sent me photos of them, thank you. One of them's in a mortuary, can you believe that? It's fantastic. I'm gonna have to do nuns tonight next, but oh yeah, I missed out the nun. The video before, I missed out the nun ghost story. So yeah, I'll have to update that. In Gatestone Hall, I missed the ghosts of the nuns out. Yeah, there's some really good ghost stories of nuns in Gatestone Hall. Completely forgot about them. I did mention nuns being there, but just forgot to mention about them being there. But anyway, getting back onto this one. This monk is quite regularly seen at this chapel, and he goes right way back to the 1400s. And it's quite difficult to pinpoint what this could be. Now I'm going to say, oh, ghost of monk, ghost of monk. The reason I say it's hard to pinpoint would be because the description of him changes over the period of time. So we've got a tall monk, a short monk, a monk in a black cape, a monk in a black outfit, a monk in a brown outfit. They're not the same image or whatever. Is this people making up their own stories? Is this a different monk, different outfit, going up and down, getting taller and shorter? Don't know. But the collection of these stories of this monk always place him in the same place, and that is literally right outside of the chapel, right outside the doors of the chapel. And there's no sort of deviation. He's not walking about, he's not doing anything. He's just standing there with his head down, and people have walked out of that chapel, and when they've turned around, this monk is just standing there and it's frightening the life out of them, and then he just evaporates, he just fades away. So yeah, this monk is seen in all different shapes and sizes, which doesn't really add up. Is it more of an urban legend, a myth that's been made up over the years? I know it used to be quite a lot of reports about it on the Paranormal database, but that's all sort of gone. Don't know what's happened with the Paranormal database. It used to be really worthwhile, but I think because people can edit their own stuff there, or they used to, I don't know if they can anymore, but the value of it has probably gone down a little bit. But is this an urban legend? For so many reports about this monk, and again, he doesn't do anything, he just stands there. There's not much more information apart from just this monk standing by the door. This was seen so often that you got to think either it's an urban legend of people making it up, or that it's the most predictable ghost there is in the country. So I'll let you make your own mind up about that. Again, thank you for your support, absolutely incredible. Thank you for all the new subscribers. If you're a new subscriber, don't forget to put your notifications on the bell. Thank you again to my members for supporting me. Absolutely fantastic. And I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.